Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. The National Caucus and Center on Black Aging, along with the American Lung Association, welcomes you to our webinar on lung cancer and its effects on the Black community. Our presenters today are Taimur Zahir, Michaela Pittman, and Laura Buracha. Ty Zahir is the National Director of Lung Cancer Education and is an organizational leader in public health and lung cancer initiatives at the American Lung Association. He focuses on the patient and career voice of the lung cancer community, bringing their thoughts and feelings into the national perspective. He addresses one of the organization's key strategic imperatives to defeat lung cancer and has a great interest in addressing health disparities. Ty's educational background and career experience is in biochemistry and patient care. He holds a bachelor's degree in biochemistry from the City University of New York, Hunter. Michaela Pittman is a member of the American Lung Association's National Tobacco Team and serves as National Manager for the Health Promotions. Michaela comes from a background in infectious diseases, having led disease surveillance and community support efforts. At the Lung Association, she is integral in developing, managing, and implementing key lung cancer screening programs across the nation, with particular focus on health equity, systems change, and resource sharing among health systems and community. She holds a master's degree in gender, society, and representation from University College, London. Laura Buracha is a public health nurse who joined the American Lung Association to serve in the role of Lung Health Line Nurse Navigator. As part of the Lung Association's lung cancer screening programs, she serves as a health care professional, guiding individuals through the process of screening, eligibility, process of low-dose CT scan, determining nearby screening locations, and addressing barriers that may be identified. Laura's work is fundamental and highlights the need for further lung cancer screening resources and programs. And our questions and answers facilitator today is Ms. Keisha Lewis, a practicing occupational therapist and a certified diabetes care and education specialist. Ty, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Angela, for that wonderful and warm welcome. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We're going to talk all about lung cancer today, but let's start off at the very top. We're going to talk about the American Lung Association's mission and commitment to lung health. The Lung Association has had a long history of saving lives by improving lung health and preventing lung disease. We were founded in 1904 by a group of volunteers dedicated to ending the major lung health threat at the time, tuberculosis. With TB largely controlled in the US, we have expanded that mission to other respiratory diseases. And thanks to our donors, volunteers, program event participants, and staff, we are the trusted source of lung health education, lung disease research, support programs, services, and advocacy. Our mission includes reducing the burden of lung disease, advocating for to ensure access to quality and affordable healthcare for all, eliminate tobacco use, addressing clean air standards, transportation, and clean climate change for all. Next slide, please. The American Lung Association serves all Americans through 4 strategic imperatives. We aim to defeat lung cancer, champion clean air for all, create tobacco-free future, and improve the quality of life for those with lung disease and their families. We accomplish this mission with 3 arms: education, advocacy, and research. Now I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Michaela. She'll talk a bit about the history of public health and the Black community. Michaela, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and thank you all for having us here today. It's such an honor to speak and talk with you all. So I'm going to kind of get into the history of public health in the Black community. Next slide, please. So we often hear about health equity, but what does that really mean? So health equity is the opportunity for everyone to reach their full health potential, regardless of any socially determined circumstance. Disparities or inequities are differences between individuals or population groups, while inequities are differences that are unnecessary and avoidable, but are also unjust and unfair. And despite decades of efforts to reduce and eliminate health disparities, they persist, and in some cases, they are widening. American author and activist James Baldwin noted, "Nothing can be changed until it is faced." And in a time when structural and social inequities facing Black Americans are being brought to the forefront, it can no longer be ignored that tobacco and more broadly lung health is a racial justice issue. Next slide. Historical traumas such as the Tuskegee syphilis study provide critical context for interpreting present-day mistrust. However, we must also acknowledge the everyday racism that Black communities and families still face. For example, one study found that half of medical students and residents held one or more false beliefs about supposed biological differences between Black and white patients, like the false belief that Black patients have a higher tolerance for pain because they have thicker skin, or often minimizing the physical and emotional tolls of exposure to police brutality, substandard housing in schools, polluted neighborhoods, or other parts of the daily experiences of some Black Americans. To rebuild trust, everyday racism must be confronted in the present. And to acknowledge the current efforts being done today, last week, the family of Henrietta Lacks, a woman who had cells taken from her without her consent to be used for research more than 70 years ago, and the biotechnology company Thermo Fisher Scientific reached an undisclosed settlement. This case is not only historic, but groundbreaking in consent, justice, and research. Next slide, please. The major tobacco companies have also relentlessly targeted Black Americans with their predatory marketing for decades. Black people are disproportionately exposed to cigarette advertisements, particularly from menthol brands. And researchers found that stores in predominantly Black neighborhoods were up to 10 times more likely to display tobacco ads than retailers in areas with fewer Black residents. Some trends through big tobacco marketing include some Americans being protected from secondhand smoke while others are not, corporate marketeers using flavors to entice specific groups to try tobacco products, access to treatment for tobacco-related health issues, and varies widely by population, geography, and other variables. And of course, discrimination increases stress, driving higher rates of tobacco use for some groups. Next slide. Here you can see two maps that highlight the historical racist policy of redlining, a policy that has concentrated people of color into communities and neighborhoods where resources have been divested. On the left map, red represents a hazardous environment, while on the right, the red highlights the large percentage of people of color who live in the neighborhood. They are directly correlated. Next slide. And here you can see the same map above, but overlaid with the cost of menthol cigarettes. As the population of Black residences increase, the price of menthol cigarettes decrease. The tobacco industry flooded Black communities with advertising in their neighborhoods, special price promotion, advertisements in Black publications, and have financially supported historically Black colleges and universities and other community-based events. These marketing tactics have led to a huge health disparity concerning tobacco use among Black communities. Next slide. It is important to understand that health disparities are the result of many factors, including access to healthcare, poor quality of care, access to healthy foods, poverty, violence, environment, language barriers, and health behaviors. In fact, we know that from 1967 to 2017, Black Americans had the lowest median household of any other racial group, with nearly 19% of Black Americans living in poverty, the highest rate of any other race. People with lower economic stability are also more likely to engage in behaviors that increase cancer risk because of the marketing strategies, as we've previously spoken about, that target these populations, as well as environmental and community factors, such as fewer opportunities for physical activity and less access to fresh fruits and vegetables. We also know that those who have lower levels of education are unemployed, or who live at, near, or below the US poverty level have higher rates of smoking than the general population. Other researchers have found greater risk for Black Americans from hazardous air pollutants, including those pollutants that also come from traffic sources. And due to decades of residential segregation, Black Americans tend to live where there is greater exposure to air pollution in cities and closer to traffic zones. Cultural competence in healthcare settings is also something that needs to be confronted head on. Cultural competence is defined as the ability of providers and organizations to effectively deliver healthcare services that meet the social, cultural, and linguistic needs of patients. The lack of cultural competency and good communication can be directly linked to misdiagnosis, less empathy and acknowledgement of concerns, and overall poor health outcomes. Studies have shown that Black people report lower levels of trust in hospitals and healthcare providers than white individuals, and in many cases, mistrust can reduce the likelihood that a patient will seek medical screenings or follow up with recommended treatments. When providers recognize that each patient comes with a range of previous experiences with healthcare, some of them based in trauma, various literacy levels, language fluency, and cultural norms, they can begin to engage equitably and respectfully with everyone who seeks care. And it is also important to note that poor cultural competency is a failing of the healthcare system and structural racism and not of patients and community members. Next slide. Through key partnerships with other leading Black organizations, who in many cases have had more than 40 years of experience serving their communities, the Lung Association created the Addressing Tobacco Use in Black Communities Toolkit. This toolkit provides the Lung Association a better understanding of strategies that best serve and further identify barriers that are existing, as well as tobacco industry's tactics that manipulate and target the Black community. Working with these organizations, we hosted focus groups and held key informant interviews with experts in this space to truly learn barriers in health equity and other injustices that occur. These tactics allow the Lung Association and its partners to truly provide resources and services to communities and individuals that need it. And today's presentation is a really great opportunity for us to share the results of this project. And so with that being said, I will pass it back to Ty to talk about lung cancer care in the Black community. Thank you.
Next slide, please. Thank you, Michaela, for that wonderful overview of the history. Let's dive into the lung cancer topics now. So here's what we know. Smoking poses the greatest risk, but there's other risk factors such as exposure to radon and air pollution. Lung cancer is a leading cancer killer in both men and women in the United States. Screening high-risk individuals has the potential to dramatically increase lung cancer survival rates. There are multiple types of lung cancer, which we'll discuss in the presentation. Next slide, please. So you might ask, what is lung cancer? Lung cancer happens when cells in the lung change. This is called a mutation. Unlike normal cells, cancer cells grow uncontrollably, and they cluster together to form a tumor. This destroys healthy tissue around them, and symptoms usually don't appear until cancer cells spread to other parts of the body, and then prevent organs from functioning properly. At this point, it's hard to treat lung cancer. Next slide, please. Let's dive into what lung cancer might look like for someone in the Black community. According to the American Lung Association's annual State of Lung Cancer report, Black Americans with lung cancer were 15% less likely to be diagnosed early, 19% less likely to receive surgical treatment, 10% more likely not to receive treatment, and 12% likely to not survive 5 years or more compared to white Americans. Next slide, please. There are many reasons why we see these outcomes. Over the years, we've interviewed members of the Black community to learn about how they handle challenges through lung cancer diagnoses. Through various focus groups and interviews, oftentimes we hear individuals are underinsured. They have a hard time covering the cost of care. They also mention that there's other barriers, such as lack of access to transportation, inability to get time off of work, lack of access to childcare and other family responsibilities, which keep them from going through with treatment, as well as a lot of what Michaela mentioned earlier. There is hope, though. We're going to go through some free resources and ways to help you take control of your care and beat lung cancer if you're ever diagnosed or ever need it at any point. Next slide, please. It's also important to know what someone can expect in their experience going from talking with their doctor in the initial intake to diagnosis to survival. Sometimes lung cancer is found when looking for other conditions on routine health checks, as well as preventative lung cancer screenings. It's important to know what to expect if doctors find anything they want to look further into on the initial scans. Each person may have different experiences and recommended treatment paths, but this slide describes a general experience lung cancer patients can expect if they go through a lung cancer screening. We will go through this in a high-level overview. We'll also share some of the resources throughout the presentation and where to go on our website for more information. Next slide, please. As part of our mission to defeat lung cancer, we aim to promote lung cancer screening across the United States. The states in purple, like Texas, Florida, California, New York, and many more, show coverage based on the current recommended guidelines, which is the ideal. The states in bright pink show general coverage for lung cancer screening. There's only two states that don't cover lung cancer screening. That's Alabama and Arkansas, shown in blue. Addressing racial disparities in health coverage is critical to addressing racial disparities in lung cancer care. So we're always advocating for change. Next slide, please. As part of our mission to increase screening across the US, we launched Save by a Scan. This was an initiative that the Lung Cancer created, and there was a wonderful animation known as a hope story. Go ahead and play the clip.
Where did the time go? Somehow I lost all those years. Where did the time go? I don't know how I got here. Or how did I get here?
You've done the hard part. You quit smoking. Now do the easy part and get scanned for lung cancer. If you smoked, you may still be at risk, but early detection could save your life. Talk to your doctor and learn more at savedbythescan.org.
Fantastic. So as you saw there, there was a whole animation for it, and we talked about lung cancer screening quite a bit. There is also eligibility requirements. So the current guidelines for lung cancer screening include meeting these 3 criteria: being between 50 and 80 years of age, having a 20-pack year history of smoking. This means having 1 pack a day for 20 years or 2 packs a day for 10 years or any combination of that sort. And if you're also a current smoker or have quit within the last 15 years. If an individual meets all 3 of these requirements, they're considered high risk for lung cancer and an appointment with their doctor is recommended. Go ahead and visit the quiz that we mentioned before on savebyascan.org, or you can use the QR code on this slide here. Next slide, please. If you meet the lung cancer screening eligibility requirements, a follow-up with your doctor for a shared decision-making appointment comes next. This is where you would chat through and weigh your options to see if you'd be open to a screening, what the cost would be and where to get coverage, where to find help and the facility to get screened, what screening results mean, and what you do after a lung cancer screening. This is a great time to discuss any concerns with your care team. Once you come to a consensus, your doctor will then order the screening. Next slide, please. So in case you're not insured or underinsured, the Lung Association has many resources for your reference. Visit lung.org/USPSTF-toolkit, where you can find coverage and information on these types of resources. Next slide, please. Now, if you're at high risk for lung cancer and you have your doctor determine that you should be screened, it's also important to find a facility that has staff with the experience of lung cancer screening. Now, you want to ask your doctor to recommend you to a facility that meets these requirements. When you visit Saved by the Scan, you will also find a national screening facility locator tool. This will help you find a screening facility near you. Next slide, please. Ultimately, screening is up to each individual, but all this talk about low dose CT scans, what is it and what can you expect? So the scan itself is painless and quick, less than a minute. You'll lie down on your back on the machine and it will slide in and out with scanning your chest. Technologist will ask you to hold your breath and they'll run you through the process and take snapshots as they go along. The main benefit of lung cancer screening is to prevent death from lung cancer. Lung cancer screening finds over half of lung cancer at an early stage when it's more curable, compared to about only 25% without screening. Depending on your results, you might not need to go in for further action. In some cases, doctors may ask you to come in for follow-up scans, just to keep an eye on things to see if any changes occur in your results. In other cases, your doctor may order further test results to get additional information, such as a PET scan or an MRI. Next slide, please. Another one of these tests is to get more information is known as a biopsy. To see if something suspicious is actually lung cancer, the doctor must study tissue or fluid from around the lung. Many different procedures allow doctors to remove cells from the body and look at them under a microscope to determine if they are actually lung cancer. These procedures involve anesthesia and often use flexible tubes, cameras, and precision tools. With today's advanced technologies, the procedures have become safe and less invasive than ever before. The biopsy is also a crucial step. If cells are found to be benign or no cancer at all, patients don't have to go through treatment, which saves them time and money. The patient's medical team chooses tests based on several factors: the patient's medical history, the patient's symptoms, findings from the physical exams, and test results as well. Next slide, please. So once doctors have tissue samples and place it under the microscope, they may see some types of lung cancer a patient has. There are two main types, which include non-small cell lung cancer, making up roughly 80% of cases, and then small cell lung cancer, making up roughly 10 to 15% of cases. When you compare these rates and compare them to the national averages for race and ethnicity, they tend to be similar across the board. Small cell lung cancer is almost always associated with cigarette smoke and is almost always treated with chemotherapy. Next slide, please. The types of cancer are named based on how the cells look under a microscope, as you see here. Oh, back one slide. There we go. So as you see here, there's an image of a slide provided by the NIH. It's a slide of the non-small cell lung cancer shown under the microscope. Non-small cell lung cancer usually grows and spreads to other parts of the body more slowly than small cell lung cancer does, and often has more treatment options. Next slide, please. Once the type is determined, the care team determines the stage of lung cancer. Lung cancer staging is when doctors find where the lung cancer is spread and where it's located, the size of the tumor, and if it has moved on to other parts of the body. Next slide, please. Oh, back one slide. Sorry. Lung cancer staging helps determine treatment options, which may be best. Staging gives some information about lung cancer prognosis, but doesn't predict an individual's lifespan. Next slide, please. There are also aspects of lung cancer that doctors can't see under a microscope. Doctors would also use tissue samples for further testing by sending them off to labs. Results typically take 2 weeks to come back, but are often worth the wait. Test results help get more detailed information about the makeup of the tumor. It involves testing tissue for abnormalities in the tumor's DNA and the levels of proteins in the tumor. These tests are sometimes called biomarker testing, molecular testing, or genomic testing. If doctors know exactly what's causing the tumor to grow, a patient may be able to receive additional treatment options like targeted therapies and immunotherapies. These therapies are specifically designed to target specific mutations. Next slide, please. Based on the type of lung cancer stage, and lung cancer treatment goals, you and your care team come up with the treatment plan. Lung cancer patients may receive several types of treatment. Each lung cancer treatment option has potential side effects, which usually can be managed. There are also several treatment options listed here, which include surgery, radiation therapy, chemotherapy, targeted therapy, immunotherapy, clinical trials, palliative care, and alternative therapy. This is a good time for patients to monitor how their body is doing with each treatment and mention it to their care team so that they can adjust dosage and provide additional recommendations. Patients are living longer and happier lives thanks to all of the treatment options available now. Go ahead, next slide, please. Treatment can take a financial toll if it's not properly planned for. The good news is the Lung Association offers many treatment assistant resources that can be found when you scan the QR code shown on the screen. The page will take you to a list of resources to get insured, financial assistance programs, clinical trials information, transportation assistance should you need it. Our helpline is also ready to walk you through your needs as well. Go ahead, next slide, please. And sharing news of lung cancer diagnosis is an important step to seeking support during this challenging time. Sometimes loved ones may form their own opinion about how family members get lung cancer and may ask the question, did you smoke? Responding by emphasizing the need for support during treatment rather than focusing on the cause helps others understand how they can best support you during this time. Sharing a diagnosis is a personal decision and everyone's experience will be unique. Open communication and support are crucial during this lung cancer journey. Next slide, please. And as promised, here's a list of resources that can help you take control and survive lung cancer. We have online support communities, one-on-one mentorship programs, the lung helpline as mentioned before, up-to-date information on lung cancer if you visit lung.org/lung cancer. Next, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Laura. She's going to talk about how you can lower your risk and how to avoid lung cancer altogether.
Thank you, Ty. And thank you everybody for having me. So I will be discussing lung cancer risk factors, prevention, and the Black community. Next slide. So first, I just want to remind everybody that there is hope. You know, whether you're in perfect health, you're living with a lung condition, there are many things you can do to protect your lungs, your health, and your overall health and well-being. Next slide. So these are the lung cancer risk factors: smoking, hazardous chemicals, genes, radon exposure, particle pollution, and secondhand smoke. And I will be going into more detail about each one in the next slides. Next slide. So a risk factor that you can change is smoking. Despite a downward trend in smoking rates for adults overall, there are inequities in smoking rates that continue to exist. Smoking is the #1 cause of lung cancer, and it causes about 90% of lung cancer cases. Tobacco smoke contains many chemicals that are known to cause lung cancer, and if you still smoke, quitting is the single best thing you can do for your lung health. Over time, cigarette smoke destroys healthy lung tissue and may trigger changes that grow into cancer. Despite significant economic progress over the past decade in the US, Black Americans continue to experience far worse economic conditions than any other race in America due to centuries of overt and structural racism, the effects of which have caused socioeconomic disparities that continue to exist today. Above, you can see a trend. In 2019, some population subgroups reported smoking at higher rates compared to the overall population, including those who report poor mental health, have a disability, identify as LGBTQ, or live in a multi-unit housing. 90% of Black Americans live in poverty. That's the highest rate of any race. And according to this Massachusetts study, you can see that 22% of those who fall in the less than 25,000 income status are 22% more likely to smoke. Black Americans are more likely to smoke compared to those white Americans at 14.4%. Low socioeconomic status is a key social determinant of health, and that poses a significant challenge to tackling the tobacco use in the Black community. Next slide. Menthol and the Black community. Lung health disparities persist among Black Americans, especially in lung cancer and menthol cigarette use. Menthol cigarettes remain a key vector for tobacco-related deaths and diseases in the Black community, with more than 80% of Black Americans who smoke that are using them. Since the 1960s, tobacco companies have used menthol as their special ingredient to help the poison go down more smoothly. Consequently, tobacco companies have relied on the soothing and cooling effect of menthol to keep and recruit new members or new smokers, especially within the Black community. Addressing tobacco use in Black communities is important because 73% of Black individuals who smoke want to quit smoking, yet they're typically less successful than other populations in their quit attempts due to low utilization of cessation treatments such as counseling and medication. Evidence suggests that this is a result of the fact that Black Americans are less likely to be screened for nicotine use, to receive cessation advice, and to be prescribed nicotine replacement treatment than the white counterparts. In anticipation of the FDA's proposal to remove menthol cigarettes from the marketplace, the American Lung Association is actively working to address these disparities and the systemic issue that perpetrate them. Next slide. So how can you take action? Well, we're here to help, and we're ready to help whenever you're ready. The American Lung Association has a program called Freedom from Smoking, and this was introduced almost 40 years ago, and it uses techniques based on pharmacological and psychological principles, and it offers a structured systematic approach to quitting tobacco altogether. And this is for all tobacco products, including cigarettes, vaping, pipes, smokeless tobacco, e-cigarettes, and vaping devices. And helping people quit smoking is critical to achieving our mission. And the American Lung Association has long been a leader in the field of smoking cessation. The American Lung Association is the only organization offering tobacco users the full suite of quit options that you can see on the screen there. Next slide. We also have additional support. We have the Lung Helpline and Tobacco Quit Line, and this is where we can offer free counseling. And the helpline was initiated nearly 23 years ago. And the core idea is to manage lung health together. So we want to help and guide individuals that are uninsured, underinsured, and empower them to seek and prevent lung health issues. So we further encourage individuals to make lifestyle changes. We also have the Lung Cancer Helpline, which is the 1-800-ALA-LUNG. Then we encourage everybody to call and get a pre-screening to see if you qualify for a lung cancer screening. Next slide. So I know there was a question in the chat that said, why are more people who have never smoked being diagnosed with lung cancer? So this I hope will help answer that question. So a risk factor that you can help manage, outside of smoking is particle pollution and hazardous chemicals. So exposure to certain hazardous chemicals poses a lung cancer risk factor, such as materials like asbestos, uranium, arsenic, cadmium, chromium, nickel, and some other petroleum products. And these are especially dangerous. And then particle pollution, which refers to very tiny solid and liquid particles that are in the air we breathe. Evidence shows that particle pollution that comes from indoor and outdoor air pollution increases your risk for lung cancer. Particle pollution can increase your risk of heart disease, lung cancer, asthma attacks, and can interfere with the growth and how your lungs work. Nothing about particle pollution is simple, but particle pollution can come from many sources such as factories, power plants, diesel and gasoline powered motor vehicles, agriculture practices, and fires. Particle pollution can be dangerous to breathe even at low concentration, and it can trigger illness, hospitalization, and premature death. And then what we recommend is that you, to find out what the air quality looks like where you live, to go to stateoftheair.org to look at the report for your state. Next slide. So take action and reduce your risk. So this is what you can do about hazardous chemicals and particle pollution. Clean air begins at home. So we recommend that you declare your home a smoke-free zone. You keep your humidity levels lower, under 50%. You can use a dehumidifier or an air conditioner as needed. If you're exposed to dust and fumes at work, ask your health and safety advisor about how you're being protected. Fix all leaks in your home. You want to prevent high humidity levels that can cause mold. Check your air pollution forecast in the area. And then avoid exercising outdoors when pollution levels are high. And then don't burn wood or trash. This is actually a major source of particle pollution. And get involved. Start by checking out our Healthy Air campaign, which has more information about what you can do. We spend about 90% of our time indoors, and that's why your indoor air quality is so important, just as much as outdoor air. And then indoor air could be about 2 to 5 times more polluted than outdoor air, and that's why clean air begins at home. Next slide. Risk factors you can help manage. Another one is radon. So radon occurs naturally, and it's an invisible, odorless, and radioactive gas. It's actually the second leading cause of lung cancer. And it's the leading cause of lung cancer among those that never smoke. So we want to recognize that dangerous levels of radon might be found in any home or any building. Exposure to radon combined with cigarette smoke will increase your risk for lung cancer. And any home can have a radon problem. This could be old homes, new homes, well-ventilated homes, well-sealed homes, drafty homes, homes with or without basements, and even apartments. In fact, more than 1 in 15 homes have elevated levels of radon. Even if your neighbors have low radon levels, you could still have high levels of radon. And high levels of radon have been found in every state because radon is odorless, colorless, and the only way to know if there is a problem in your home or building is by testing the radon level. If high levels are detected, a radon mitigation system should be installed by a radon professional. Next slide. So how can you take action for radon is to test your home. There are do-it-yourself kits that are available and digital detectors that are typically low in cost. You can also order a radon test kit at lung.org/radon. Again, the only way to detect any buildup of radon in your home is to test the air. There's short-term and long-term tests and digital tests as well. Or you could hire a certified radon testing professional. And the best way to find one is to contact your local state radon program. Next slide. Another risk factor, and one that you unfortunately cannot change, are your genes. Genetic factors play a major role in one's chances to developing lung cancer, but only a few specific genes and other genetic factors affecting lung cancer have been identified to date. Family history of lung cancer means that you could be at higher risk of getting the disease. If anybody in your family has or has ever had lung cancer, it's important to mention this to your doctor. There are also some biomarkers you can see on the screen there that could help detect lung cancer early. Researchers like Dr. Alicia Holbert, she's an assistant professor in the Department of Surgery at the University of Illinois Cancer Center. She's studying epigenetics, which examines changes in genes due to external factors such as air pollution and stress. Dr. Holbert is particularly interested in how these genes could serve as biomarkers to detect lung cancer early. She's interested in studying the Black population, as they're more likely to have lung cancer diagnosed at late stages, and they're underrepresented in research. Also, the Black community may experience higher levels of stress, which could contribute to changes in their genes and increase their risk of cancer. To better understand the tumor biology of Black Americans, there needs to be more Black patients enrolled in clinical trials. Next slide. Another risk factor is secondhand smoke, and this is a risk factor that you can change. There's no risk-free level of exposure to secondhand smoke, and even short-term exposure makes you at risk. Secondhand smoke contains hundreds of chemicals known to be toxic and carcinogenic. Avoid exposure to any secondhand smoke, and we recommend that you view your state's report of state of tobacco control to see what grade your state received and how it compares to other states and how it's working to eliminate tobacco, vaping, and secondhand smoke. Next slide. So how you can take action against secondhand smoke and what can you do? Insist that nobody smokes in your home or your car. Avoid group settings where people are smoking. Join our Fight for Smoke-Free Era and Lung Health by becoming a member of our Lung Action Network at lung.org/action. And then tell us how your tell us your story about how secondhand smoke has impacted you at lungforce.org/tell your story. Next slide. All right, so I know we shared a lot, but here are some of the highlights. Don't smoke. If you do, we're here to help. Avoid secondhand smoke, exercise and get regular checkups, test your home for radon, avoid exposure to air pollutants that can damage your lungs, take steps to improve your indoor air quality, and share what you have learned with others. All right, I'm going to pass it on back to Ty. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura, for that valuable information. Now we're going to talk about some of the stories and share some stories from the community. Go ahead and advance the slide, please. This one is a story of Millie, one of our Saved by the Scan heroes. She talks about the importance of getting screened and how it saved her life. Let's go ahead and play the clip.
Gave me a new voice, you know, because I stopped smoking. I no longer smoke. My family, my son, my daughter-in-law, all smoked prior to my diagnosis. We've all quit smoking. It's been over a year.
It feels great to have my mom back doing what she loves to do. It makes everyone happy. It makes us smile. It makes her grandkids smile. And it feels like we've just climbed the biggest mountain that we ever could. So with that said, I mean, we can accomplish anything.
To have an opportunity like this to continue not only my life, but maybe provide enough information that someone else's life can be saved. I'm a very emotional person, but this emotion is joy because I've been given another chance. I sing because I'm happy. I sing because I am cancer-free. Saved by the Scan saved my life.
That was such an impactful story from Millie. We're going to also talk about a little bit of how the members of the Black community are less likely to seek out medical help due to the mistrust that we mentioned earlier. And this leads to poor outcomes, and this is where we also see a lack of representation in clinical trials or the research that conducted for the life-saving drugs that need to be developed. At the Lung Association, we are working to build connections with the Black community and hear their message on this topic. Here we see lung cancer survivor, husband, and retired veteran Edward. He shares his story of how he was diagnosed with lung cancer after retiring and several years of service to the United States Air Force. Let's play the clip.
I am a lung cancer survivor, and I have participated in 2 lung cancer clinical trials. My faith in God is what sustains me through all of this. I know I was offered a spot in each trial for a reason. Some people in my community are apprehensive about clinical trials, but I've had a very positive experience, and I encourage everyone to talk to their doctor about clinical trials and keep the faith.
The good news is Ed is doing really well, and he's on his 2nd trial now. Next, we have Danielle Mitchell. She's founder of Black Women in Clinical Research. She talks about her grandmother's battle with cancer when she first saw the lack of diversity in clinical trials. She saw this also earlier in her career as a clinical researcher. She's set out on her mission to change this. Let's play the clip.
We are facing an issue in cancer care in this country. Black Americans are underrepresented in clinical research. I am working to fix that. I started my career as a clinical research coordinator because my grandmother had cancer. I saw the lack of diversity in clinical trials, and I've set out to change that. Representation matters. Ask your doctor about participating in a clinical trial.
And the last video we have here is of Bishop Jeffrey Goldsmith. He's the Bishop of Emmanuel Tabernacle Church in Oklahoma City. He shares his perspective as a faith leader in his community. Let's play the clip.
I've been a faith leader in the Black community since 1993, and I've always said faith and the human element need to come together, and a perfect example of this is clinical trials. I know some members of my community might be skeptical about clinical trials, but we need to recognize when we are being presented with an opportunity and not be left out. If we're asking our faith to help us, we need to participate when it shows up.
And that's a couple slides just to highlight what we do on the local level. As previously mentioned, the Lung Association works and partners with leading Black organizations over the years. We've given a lot of resources to people in their local communities, giving them access to all of these life-saving information on lung cancer screening, and we hope to continue. Next slide, please. Not only do our combined efforts appear in local businesses, they also show up in community-based events. There are numerous events that take place around the country each year, such as health fairs, back-to-school events, screening and survivorship days, as well as pop-up markets and other businesses. These events are critical in inspiring, empowering, and engaging the individuals in the local community. We are so proud to have these events, and we enjoy them and enjoy making them fun, safe, and unique to each community. Next slide, please. Our combined effort to defeat lung cancer has resulted in a national increase of 21% over the past 5 years in survival rate, which brings the national survival rate to 25%. However, there's still much work to be done. Much of these improvements are still needed in the Black community. We will continue to strive towards our mission and vision of a world free of lung disease. Next slide, please. And if anyone wants to get in touch, you can contact us here with our emails available. Next slide, please. Let's open it up to questions.
Okay, thanks so much for that presentation. Ty, Michaela, and Laura, we really appreciate it. It was some great information. I'm going to leave your contact information kind of as our slide in case someone wants to copy those emails down and reach out to you all. But we did have lots of questions in the chat. And so we have probably about the next 10 minutes or so to answer some of those questions that are in the chat. Some of the ones that I wrote down and kind of wanted to highlight was someone asked about how you can test your environment. And I know that was shared with us in the presentation, but you all talked about radon. And so you also mentioned that you had a radon kit that you could purchase at long.org. So could you tell us more about testing your environment? And then how much is that radon kit on long.org if anyone wanted to get that to test their environment?
Sure, I can answer on that. So the radon kit that's on our website, there's short-term and long-term kits, and they range, I think they start at like $18 for a short-term kit, and I think the long-term kit is about $30. The difference between the short-term and the long-term kit is a short-term kit, you collect data for about 2 to 7 days. So it will tell you if your home has a problem, but it will, if there is a problem and you do have radon, it will require follow-up testing to get more information. And then if you get the long-term test, you usually test for up to 3 months. It's more accurate because it collects more data. So those are the two that can be found on our website. And then you could also, like I said, find other kits just like your typical stores, like a Home Depot or other stores like that in your area.
Okay, and then in the chat, thank you for placing that information about the price of the kits. The short-term kit is $18 and the long-term kit is $30. So thank you for that. Another question we have, and you highlighted that in your slides, but some people don't meet the criteria to be screened for lung cancer because, as you mentioned, some of the high-risk categories, or if you smoked, or if you were over the age of 50. But what if you don't smoke? How can you encourage your doctor to actually screen you for lung cancer?
Laura, do you want to take this one and I follow up there?
Yeah, so typically for those that don't meet the qualifications, I still encourage them to have the conversation with their doctor, especially if they have any family history of lung cancer or um, any other concerns, because a doctor could still order, it doesn't have to be a low dose CT to test for lung cancer. They might be able to order diagnostics CT depending on their symptoms. If they don't follow within that criteria, there are other ways their doctor can order or test for lung cancer.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if you
Right.
want to add on to that, Ty.
Yeah, and so where the guidelines come from is the United States Preventative Services Task Force. They conducted a lot of research on what the recommended guidelines should be, what the high-risk populations would be. So, that's where we get our recommendations from, and that's how we kind of figure out who we should also recommend. But like Laura mentioned, folks who don't fall into that category, they can still definitely talk to their doctor. It's always important to keep that front of mind.
I can also just quickly tack on to that. I know Ty mentioned all the research that's being done to get these eligibility criteria that's constantly changing. Only 2 years ago, I believe it's 2021, they updated it from ages 55 to 80. It has been lowered to 50 years old in terms of eligibility, which allows more women, more people of color to go in and get scanned, which is really great. So that's continuously changing as new research comes out and more people get scanned.
Okay, thank you. Another question we had here was physical access to be able to have a scan. Someone mentioned that they have a disability, so how might they gain physical access to be able to get a scan? Because I think in the video, we pictured someone getting up on the table for a screen, but do you all have any insight on how that might happen for someone who's unable to get on the table?
Yeah, sure. Laura, do you want to start or should I start on this one?
You can go ahead.
Okay, so someone who has physical disabilities, like if they're in a wheelchair, you would most likely have the help of someone lifting them up and bringing them to the actual table. So they would probably do that outside the room because you don't want to bring metal into the room. It's a giant magnet that you're going into. And so you definitely want to call ahead of time, let them know that you might have a wheelchair or something, and then they'll prepare.
Okay.
And if you have anything inside your body, also, like a pacemaker or anything like that, Laura, I don't know if you have any recommendations there or any other comments.
Yeah, I mean, typically before you have a screening, somebody will call from either like somebody from wherever you're getting the screening. They will go over all the rules, like what you can and cannot. Like if you have piercings, they'll tell you to take them off. And they're very familiar with how their CT machine works. So typically they can bring the wheelchair in there. They just have to make sure that their machine is off. And then, I think as long as you let them know what your capabilities are before the appointment, then they should be able to have the staff to help you get on the CT machine.
Okay, so as I understand and hear from you all, is preparing prior to your appointment to let the medical staff know at the facility that's providing the screening that you do need some accommodations to be able to make this accessible for you. And I would say working in healthcare, we do strive our best to make sure that we make things accessible, especially if we're given the right amount of time to be able to prepare for that. So another question I have here is, are e-cigarettes and vaping devices less harmful than cigarettes?
Yeah, I can take that one. The FDA has not found e-cigarettes to be safe and effective. They've been out for about, gosh, over a decade now. And so the research for it is, continuing to be collected, and the data is continuing to be collected for long-term use. But that being said, the US Surgeon General has warned about the risk of inhaling secondhand e-cigarette emissions, which is what is created when an e-cigarette user exhales the chemical cocktail created by e-cigarettes. And this chemical cocktail, creates different, involves different chemicals, like the chemical that kills weeds or exhaust, or so it's not, I would not recommend that as an alternative to using commercial tobacco. And we have not found it to be safe and effective in helping individuals quit smoking either. So that, I don't know if Laura or Ty want to tack on to that at all.
No, that was beautifully said. Like
Yeah.
you said, it's only, e-cigarettes have only been in the US market within like the last 10 years. So there's just a lot we don't know. But what we do know is it's definitely not good. There's so many toxic chemicals. And
I think if also, if there is a concern, if an individual is smoking and is using e-cigarettes in the interim, I would always recommend calling the lung helpline for more information, or even talking to their doctor about finding the best way to quit using proven and FDA approved methods and treatments and counseling. And that is what the Lung Association would highly recommend.
Okay. Now another question, and I see we're at 1:59, so I think I'm going to slide this one in. Are steroid inhalers safe to use to heal lungs? Can you answer that question? Anyone?
So steroid inhalers, I mean, they're usually prescribed to reduce like inflammation in the lungs. If somebody has asthma, COPD, they're not prescribed to heal your lungs. They're prescribed to reduce inflammation and treat your symptoms. So we definitely recommend that you always consult with your doctor whenever you have something that is prescribed.
Okay. Okay, well, it is our time at 1:59 here. And so again, on behalf of the National Caucus Center on Black Aging Incorporated and our health programs, we definitely appreciate that you all took some time out to provide this great presentation, to provide awareness to our community and those that we serve. And so again, we want to thank Ty, Michaela, and Laura. And Ms. Telesford, do you have anything additional that you would like to add before we send everyone on their way to enjoy their day?
Just thank you so kindly again, as you said, Keisha, to Ty and Michaela and Laura, and our audience even for joining us today. Thank you. We appreciate you. You make this even greater success. The presentation was phenomenal. We have quite a bit of requests for slides and the link. So I'll be sending those out. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So thank you, everyone, and have a great day. Enjoy the rest of your day and tune in again to what NCBA has to offer for our next webinar series. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's next week. Our next webinar is next week on dilated eye exams. Please join us. Thank you.
Thank you.